Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we are back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news, and today I think it will also probably try to cover the Steam sale at some brief amount. Let's see, I think just failing miserably as far as just even logging in daily, let alone coming in and getting like dual lives done or playing any more of this anti-spell festival, which, yeah, I just don't know how far I'm gonna get with that. Man, immediately get hiccups as soon as I start talking. Okay, today is Wednesday, November 23rd. For the accountability section, I will say I scheduled some videos, and I did that after I finished playing Resident Evil 4 with the fan-made HD textures mod. Really didn't have a lot to say about Resident Evil 4 as far as being a critic. I really was just playing the game, which is weird, certainly, but I tried to be a critic in some places. But I definitely feel like I fell much closer to what I see a lot of other content creators doing, which is barely making any statements and just being a little quiet and just playing the game. Resident Evil 4 is pretty great. It's pretty old though. It's like 17 years old, approaching 20. The understanding that it should have a remake is fairly obvious. Just look at everything here. Yeah, immediately cough and have hiccups at the beginning of a stream. Great way to start today. But yeah, it needs a remake. It needs better controls. The separate ways and assignment Ada content really should have just been left on the cutting room floor. There's both a danger in the Resident Evil 4 remake changing things too much and people not liking it because of that, or changing too little and people not liking it because of that. Like, I think changing it too little, well, would be not as big of a problem if it was literally the exact same rooms, the exact same encounters as the original game, just with better graphics. I don't know if too many people would really complain there. But if they changed it quite a bit, then and made it from a 20-hour game through in your first playthrough to a like 10-hour game, that would be a big problem. Or if there was not an equivalent encounter for each room that's memorable. Like, if you never had a big Salazar statue chasing after you in the remake, that would be a little too shocking. If you never had a fight with Krauser, if you never fought Sadler, if there isn't some character named Ashley in the game at some level, if you don't have that big village fight at the beginning, if you don't have the dog to be saved, like all those iconic things, if there are no El Gigantes, and that wouldn't be acceptable, certainly. It has to feel like you're still playing Resident Evil 4. And honestly, even just like the general little hallways need to be in the same layout, and the map needs to be about the same. So they really are kind of painted in a corner where they can't. They probably won't succeed unless they don't change much at all. I don't think people really want it to change that much anyways. Like, they just want better controls and better graphics. And it's just such an old game that you can't do that solely by remastering anymore. The fan-made HD remaster did a great job updating all the textures, but didn't touch the pre-rendered cutscenes. And I don't know if they really could have touched the pre-rendered cutscenes of Separate Ways. So by going in that, so you get this very jarring, different image in the pre-rendered cutscenes at the beginning of each chapter of Separate Ways. Separate Ways as an idea only really would have worked if it had covered the entirety of the game and had just different spawns and different layouts of where enemies would have been in the entire map of the entire main story. And you would be playing as Ada Wong, so the puzzles would have to be slightly different. And that's kind of what they did, but they skipped over large sections, and they effectively turned a 20-hour game into a 5-hour game with Separate Ways. Assignment Ada is even worse on that because it feels like it is cut content from Separate Ways, in that it could have been just an hour, maybe two, of other content that was also in Separate Ways. And I'm assuming Assignment Ada was added as extra on a different release. Where Separate Ways I think was for the PS2 version. I wouldn't be surprised if Assignment Ada came out for like a PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 version of the game. The Mercenaries concept is the same terrible concept of trying to make Resident Evil a multiplayer game before they could actually have made it a multiplayer game. And I just don't think the Mercenaries concept is good at all. It's just not in any way engaging with the strategy aspects that are very heavy in Resident Evil 4, instead focusing solely on shooting, which that and action and that kind of content I think would definitely be better served these days with just something like Halo. That part of my speculation as to why Resident Evil 4 wasn't just more copied. Like, it was certainly loved, and people took QuickTime events from it, certainly, and we saw a lot of that, but the idea of doing the Tetris and the Attaché caves never got copied by anybody else. The idea of having specific spots where specific treasures were didn't really get copied in an action shooter experience. There's just general ideas. Nowadays, random treasure or procedurally generated treasure is much more the cause, instead of there being a specific item that you have to then maybe merge with another item, then sell to the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper never shows up in any future Resident Evil game, which almost makes me wonder if the remake would even have the shopkeeper as a character. And people would be really sad if he wasn't there. But I also could see Resident Evil 4 Remake taking a lot of content from Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6, which 6 makes a lot of sense since Leon comes back in 6, and just merging all of that together and saying, hey, we're not going to remake 5 because you run into the problem of Chris being a white guy shooting a bunch of black guys in Resident Evil 5, and they got criticism for that, kind of rightly so, that the Japanese wouldn't see that coming, but I think they honestly are just had their heads in the sand so much they didn't see that coming. and they're not going to remake 6, even, which arguably 6 is the one that would need a remake more than anything. But they need some kind of connective tissue to the remake series and Resident Evil 7, so I could see just trying to take the good parts, whatever good parts you can find in 5 and 6, and connect it to the Resident Evil 4 remake. Instead of having separate ways, it would have made a lot more sense to just have Ada be a playable character in the game, at like a costume swap, but also a item swap. And I gotta say, I really do hate that you beat the game on normal difficulty, and then it says you can do a new game plus, or you can start on professional from the beginning. Regardless, that means you have to pick. New Game Plus lets you take your weapons that you've upgraded in the first playthrough and all your gold and everything like that, and have a free-for-all experience, a real laid-back experience where you would kill everything probably on the first shot for at least the first start of the game. Why did I do that? That was a mistake. But starting over on professional means you're going to have a harder experience and just start with the basic gun with no upgrades. And you can't have both, and you really should be able to have both. Particularly that gets compounded because you also, by doing separate ways and assignment Ada, one or both of those, you unlock the infinite typewriter, which is a machine gun with infinite bullets, but it costs 1 million gold. So even in the New Game Plus, you really wouldn't have enough gold to buy it. It's probably your second New Game Plus, the third time you'd start playing the game, that you'd be able to get the infinite typewriter and use that, instead of that just being free, and just letting people cheat if they want to cheat for free. Also, if you unlock the infinite rocket launcher, which is also 1 million pesetas, so you're talking potentially a 4th playthrough before you would have enough gold to unlock both the infinite typewriter, Chicago typewriter, and the infinite rocket launcher. I think something else happens if you get like S rank. Something else unlocks that's not that important if you get S rank on the what am I trying to say? If you get S rank with all the characters in every location in the Mercenaries mode, I think you unlock something else. Effectively what this does, though, is it shows that the right way to play Resident Evil 4, particularly now in the shadow of Resident Evil 4 Remake being on its way to having a remake, is to get a everything's unlocked New Game Plus save file from the internet, 100% complete save file type thing, and use that save file for your first playthrough, or maybe play the game on easy originally and do everything once if you've just never played Resident Evil 4, but then get a 100% save file and save yourself the frustration. It's just not worth it personally to me to do the Mercenaries mode and try and get S rank for everything. I probably could do it, but it would just take too long, and it's definitely not worth it to play the game a second time. I am a sucker for achievements, and so when I went and looked at the 2 achievements I'm missing, one of them is just beating the game on professional, so I guess if Resident Evil 4 Remake came out and people didn't like it, or it was buggy or something, which there is a chance of it being buggy, then I might have some slight excuse to go and play it on professional one more time, or even play the remake and then play the main game on professional. I thought there was an achievement for getting the Mercenaries mode on S rank, but there actually isn't. The other achievement I didn't get was just shooting into the lake and getting that extra kill cutscene, but because I shot into the lake. Which that is an odd cut achievement because it's very easily to miss, and there's not the best way to get it if you don't have a save file near that point. It's somewhere around chapter 2, I would say, 2 or 3 in the game. But yeah, I guess I probably don't have too much more to say about Resident Evil 4. It's still a great game, still love it. Can't really be critical of it that much. Spilled a little bit of my water here, and now I'm trying to dry it up and not ruin my mouse slide pads. That I've done that a couple times. As far as anything else, like just scheduling videos, that's the other thing I did. I need to schedule more videos. I didn't realize I was that close to running out of footage. And I'm not really that far ahead either, like as far as either recording footage or scheduling footage. Maybe I'll get into February if I'm lucky, but I really just need to power down and make more episodes, and probably make shorter episodes too. I'm continuing to see a marked high number of YouTube shorts, just like doubling the number of YouTube shorts. And it's going to be really stupid to potentially succeed and start to see subscribers show up because of YouTube shorts. The best thing I guess you can do in this situation is try not to compromise too much. What would be wrong would be if I stopped releasing any pre-recorded footage and stopped doing the live streams, and then got a bunch of subscribers only through YouTube shorts and a bunch of views through that, and then tried to bring back those things, because I would feel like to the new viewers like I was doing a bait and switch thing. So I need to just maintain consistency on the things I really do want to do, while adding things that maybe work better with YouTube shorts, or yeah, try to keep things consistent. See, so because that's the only argument I'm gonna have if somebody goes, well, I only came here for the YouTube shorts, why are you doing all this other stuff? Is that I could say I've always been doing all of this stuff. I've been doing this well before YouTube shorts even existed. And yeah, I don't think I'm gonna do a separate channel. I don't know if I've ever seen anybody make a second channel that actually helped their first channel. I don't know, really. Usually when you see somebody make a second channel, it's either a company being run by secretly a production company, and they're just people making decisions based off of either a TV mentality or just kind of guessing, or they just have so many viewers that it makes sense to them, but it doesn't make sense to a medium or small person to do the same thing. Inherently, YouTube probably should have had every channel have a separate section for shorts, and it does kind of do that, but the internal algorithm seems to be considering shorts views as to whether to recommend other videos, and in part that's probably a good thing, but in part it also might be a bit of a bad thing. Because I can't imagine any channel has YouTube shorts or are making shorts that feel quite connected to the main content. For example, like Good Mythical Morning or Good Mythical Kitchen, one of those. They do like YouTube shorts of Pokemon they would eat, and it just feels awkward and out of place from what they're doing, even though it's very similar to what they're doing. It's just not quite exactly the same, because doing it and trying to be like a TikTok experience is just way different than the 30-minute episodes, the 30-minute plus episodes you'd have around a Good Mythical Kitchen episode. It really is that 1 minute limiting factor that just doesn't make any sense at all. I guess I'm just old at a certain level. Maybe that's just why I just don't understand the YouTube shorts, the TikTok type idea. There was a brief thing, and I don't want to talk about this too much because it only lightly connects to video games, but I saw on Reddit that Vice, who has done these kind of hit pieces before, put out a video that was blocked in Japan talking about loli hentai. So just to be fully straight, it's they call them lolis usually, but it's basically any underage kid of any age drawn with no real model or real photography involved. So it's somebody creating from their head a drawing of a kid doing things that are very much not kid friendly, or having things often done to them that is very much not kid friendly. And in the adult material sold to adults, targeted towards adults, really sold to a very a niche of adults, but a niche of adults in Japan as mangas, that the Japanese as a society don't see a real problem with it, and don't really have any interest in changing anything, whereas Vice would love to see depictions, drawings, like if you drew a stick figure and put a little word bubble next to it that says I'm 10 years old, and then they're doing something sexual in nature. Vice in their hit piece would really like to see that become illegal. There are some federal laws that seem like they could be interpreted that way, but they've never been tested in the courts, because the only people that have ever been prosecuted for having obscene material, or like child obscene material, are molesters who actively acted on it and also had real photos of real kids, in which case there is a real victim there. And it's important to separate that, because there's the freedom of speech and freedom of thought to see something fictional, create something fictional, and sell something fictional in which there's no victims. And then there's the point where your freedoms end, and when you start victimizing somebody else, when you're actively like engaging or interacting with someone else in a way that should not legally be allowed. Moral crimes is what Vice is trying to argue in Japan, and that they didn't get anywhere with it, so it really was just a dumb hit piece, which probably explains why most people wouldn't have even seen the article and don't even care. Vice, I think, is pretty garbage in general, but moral crimes can never work, because as soon as you start to have a society where the elite ruling class determines what is legal based on morals can change very quickly, based on a whim or based on the desire of the elite ruling class. You get into theocracies at that point where the government is being run based on religious moral doctrine, and it is never going to be a case of a better, safer society. Japan is the permanent example of that, as far as being an incredibly safe society, for the most part, because of their lenient enforcement of things like gambling and prostitution, and their free speech. Their law and their constitution is entrenched in free speech too, and the United States wrote the Japanese constitution, so there's just like more protection for free speech in the newer Japanese constitution than the United States constitution because of it. But yeah, people read these kind of lowly adult mangas on the train, and nobody cares, not one bit. They showed the material to a probably middle level politician, I believe it was, and he's just like, I see no problem with this. Like, I have no interest in this, but I see no problem with it either. Like, he's just not concerned at all. Now, if they were gonna try and make an argument that there's a higher level of like deviant crimes, actual physical crimes, things like sexual assault or kidnapping with the intent of sexual assault, or panty thieves, which stealing underwear, that is one thing that is talked about a little bit more in Japanese society, Japanese news. Like, you could potentially argue that there's a culture of perversion that is allowed instead of being religiously persecuted like it is in the West and the United States in particular, with its puritanical views. You might be able to try to run the numbers to that, but I just don't think it's really the case. And part of the problem is, like, the panty thief meme, as it is, which is really more what it is a meme that existed well before anime existed. So there can't be causation if it was something that existed before that point. Arguably, maybe you could say that in the early 70s and 80s, the joke of somebody stealing underwear in anime became so prevalent that some crazy people did get in their head that was actually socially acceptable. But by the same argument, then you have to blame every single mass shooting in the United States on the fact that there's a lot of action and shooting in the United States, TV, movies, stories, even all their forms of entertainment. And then at a certain point, you just can't restrict free speech because there's some crazy people out there that can't tell the difference between fiction and reality. And inherently, that is this argument in a nutshell, is that you cannot pander to people who cannot tell the difference between fiction and reality. And people who make the argument that there isn't a difference between fiction and reality, because that is a disingenuous argument. Everything done in fiction has to be permissible, otherwise you don't have freedom of speech and you don't have freedom of thought. And there definitely should not be consequences in any way for having a thought or saying something in your own like content, in your own creation. Consequences in quotes, by consequences in quotes I mean there shouldn't be cancel cultures, which this has often been the topic of cancel cultures. And really a lot of it is just anti-Japanese. It's just we hate the Japanese because, you know, there's a I think middle Indonesian or one of those more to the west islands, Malaysia, one of those societies that straight up as a culture has a tradition of building a shack for their teenage daughters to have as much sex as they want with all the teenage boys, so they just stop living in the same hut, basically. And that's just the culture. It's like you turn 14, 15, 16, your father builds you a shack, and then you start inviting boys over, and it is heavily encouraged. Nobody has ever really talked about that or tried to do a cancel culture or hit piece on that, because very few people know about that society, and it's not prominent enough for clickbait. And yeah, that's I guess just a kind of an example of me trying not to talk about the stupid thing for that long. Why does that affect video games? In case I wasn't directly opposite of that, this is certainly the same attitude that some, I gotta just generally categorize them as SJWs, try to do in Valve, as far as just not allowing certain games when there really shouldn't be a problem to allow game creators to depict kids in school uniforms. Like, it's gotten that extreme though. It's just like there's a danger if you draw an anime loli in a school uniform, even in a non-adult game, that your game will be banned by Valve for no reason. And I have to call them social justice warriors in the original meaning, as I understand it, of it, because they are actively trying to censor fake artistry. What would have really gotten me to side with Vice is if they could have found any evidence whatsoever that any of these mangakas who very possibly have never even been in a room with a real child. Well, I'm exaggerating a little bit there. Like, if you could get any evidence that any of these mangakas were actually offenders, if there was any history of them actually being caught with children, or with actual, I took a photo of a real world child as reference material or otherwise, if there was any history of that at all, you could make an argument that this is in a way connected. But there is no history of that at all. Not one bit. So if anything, just on the statistics, the lowly art, whether it's adult art or otherwise, seems to actively have reduced the amount of actual illegal child material. I'm trying to dance around YouTube a little bit here too. But yeah, you have to call these people social justice warriors because they're trying to censor art instead of, you know, better enforcement of the laws out there, actually promoting treatment before a pedophile, I guess is the only word to use, acts. Like there is no plan whatsoever ever in any of these stories or in United States society at all to say, hey, let's do some preventative treatment, let's maybe even do some psychological screening on just everybody, let's just have everybody get one free therapy assessment per year. Like, just like you go and get your ears checked, your teeth checked, your eyes checked. Most people don't get their ears checked, I guess. Just in the healthcare system, which the United States doesn't even have that, just one psychological evaluation, real low key. Hey, do you have any problems? Do you have anything you'd like to talk to me about? If so, we can give you more. We could do more therapy. But yeah, there's no plans on that to stop real assaulters from assaulting real people. There's no plan on rehabilitation if you actually believed in rehabilitation, which people in the United States really don't. There's no thought even on prosecution there. YouTubers are for likes and for views are out pedophile hunting and making videos like that way more than Vice is. And certainly if you want to go a little bit more QAnon right wing, there is always the assumption that high level politicians are involved in that, and nobody seems to try to really expose or take down those people. Vice could have certainly done that. Epstein certainly proves that there's at least some level of truth to that idea too, is rich people thinking they can get away with anything, and sadly it seems like sometimes they can get away with anything. Yeah, in a lot of ways I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these articles are being written specifically to change the narrative and take the heat off politicians. And honestly, like, my advice to any potential SJW or SJW out there is just, if you see somebody else doing something you don't agree with, and you can't or won't do anything to stop this, if you see, I guess arguably, if you see somebody else doing something illegal and you can't report them or won't report them to the police, then you probably just need to take the message that if you're seeing something that you don't agree with, particularly on morals grounds, you should just look internally and make sure that you are not doing something morally wrong too. Basically, I'm trying to make a modified version of let he who is without sin cast the first stone. And yeah, I think there is probably a lot of religious people that don't take that message to heart, and fairly often are looking outside of themselves to say, oh, this person is morally inferior to me, or this person is sinning, and then instead of looking to themselves to see if they are perfectly right with God, I guess is the phrase, they just use the religion to make themselves feel superior and separate themselves from the rest of society. Particularly in like the Judeo-Christian religions, with the idea of the Holy Spirit. If you're seeing, and I'm getting into religious talk here, but I'll stop real quick. If you're seeing what you think is sinning in someone else, that probably should be taken as an indication to see if you're sinning, if there's sin within you. Of course, so many people in religions and so many people in general are just narcissists, that they see themselves as perfect. It's so easy, even if you really aren't actually a narcissist, to see yourself as perfect and see all the mistakes. It is the default nature of humans to see any mistake made to be intentional when someone else is done doing it, and accidental when you do it. And thus, you are blameless, but everybody else deserves blame. And it's really, really hard for people to admit when they make a mistake, or even to themselves. And so we'll leave that rant. But yeah, that was my attempt at a calm, actual, thoughtful commentary, which you can't really have on the internet. So let's get back to more direct video game news. Ubisoft already has confirmed that its games are returning to Steam. I think in part trying to get away from Uplay a little bit more, but also it's important to remember that a lot of the Ubisoft games have recently been shut down as far as the multiplayer content of older Assassin's Creed games and the like. So the games that are coming to Steam are the newer games, and relatively newer games. And I think a lot of the old Ubisoft games are still playable, but the multiplayer content is totally missing, so it's a far inferior experience. We already talked about Sony and Honda possibly including the PS5 in electric cars. Nintendo Switch Sports has a free golf update arriving next week. It's, I think, going to add 21 holes of golf, which is an odd number, but whatever. Warzone 2 has reached 25 million players in the first 5 days, according to Activision. And this is all Video Games Chronicles articles, so they end up talking about Warzone and Modern Warfare quite a bit. God of War Ragnarok director says he wants to work on Castlevania next. Quote, yes, if somebody could give me that Castlevania license, we would love to make that. It would be weird to do that, because the alleged original creator, and at this point, anytime anybody claims I have to refer to anybody as an original creator, I should probably say alleged, because almost every game is a team effort. But yeah, the alleged original creator went on to make that fan favorite Castlevania Castlevania clone. I want to call it Sunstone, but that's not the name of the company. That's the name of a bondage comic book. Yeah, I can't remember the name of it though. But yeah, there was just maybe a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years, a Castlevania game, and I would expect that there would be a sequel to that. So it'd be weird for Konami, I guess, I think Konami is the one that owns Castlevania, to license that to somebody and compete with that when they're really not trying to do anything with Castlevania anyways. It also would be incredibly weird for a Western company to be in charge of God of War, of Castlevania. It feels like if you were going to do that, then you would probably end up with a 3D game, much like the Lord of Shadows Castlevania reboot that failed. Not a flat 2D, 2.5D Castlevania, Metroidvania type game. Yeah, I don't see anything as far as all the screenshots I've seen of God of War Ragnarok, I can't see how you would end up with a game that played like Castlevania if you gave it to God of War Ragnarok's director. But maybe he wants to do something completely different and actually thinks he could pull it off. We're certainly not getting Metroid Prime 4 anytime soon, so there is still room to potentially start that idea, that process of making a Castlevania game. Generally speaking, though, if you're saying this in public, unless you're just actively trying to bait the Japanese into saving face, or actively trying to get people on Twitter, which I don't know how many more people are still on Twitter at this point, to rally behind that idea, it seems fairly dangerous in a lot of ways, because it does definitely hint that the director doesn't have a job lined up at all after making a hugely successful game like God of War Ragnarok. It seems like he doesn't want to make more of a God of War series, which they've already kind of made that obvious that they don't want to do anymore in the God of War series. But I suppose I kind of have to be willing to let's see, can I hit anything here? I can't target the one thing I want to target. Right, let's get rid of that then. I gotta target that guy. Right, so I'm gonna lose. It is an interesting question, and I really don't have the time to go on to yet another rant, but should we give directors of good successes anything and everything they want? Like, has that really worked in the movie industry lately, where you give Steven Spielberg a ton of money to make Indiana Jones movies after Indiana Jones movies after Indiana Jones movies, just because the first couple of Indiana Jones movies were successful, which, by the way, they're in production of yet another Indiana Jones movie. And in a lot of ways, the only reason why the first Indiana Jones movie was funded, though, was because American Graffiti did particularly well, if I'm recalling correctly. I don't think it really should go that way, though. I don't think success should be so heavily rewarded that you just get any wild and crazy request fulfilled. Like, if anything, I think the video game industry should constantly be looking at the failings of the movie industry and the TV industry and working very hard to get away from that, having real accountants and real bookkeeping happening, and not just greenlighting something because the actress is sleeping with the producer, or the producer is best friends with the production company's boss. Like, cronyism and special favors, all of that should be actively tried to be eliminated as much as possible, both in Hollywood, TV, and in video games. Moving on, the hardest Tetris game is officially coming to consoles for the first time. This previously Japan-only Grandmaster will be released for the PS4 and Switch next week. I imagine very few people would really want to play that. You're probably way better off getting the Tetris Effect for cheap on sale. Speaking of sales, Black Friday sales are going on, and I'm still keeping an eye on it. Amazon has like the Cowabunga collection for $20 of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which isn't a terrible thought. And then Amazon has like PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4 DualSense controllers pretty cheap, and I've definitely been seeing some sales for controllers, both for the PlayStation and the Xbox consoles. It does seem to me that the Series S is always discless, and I've just not paid enough attention to notice that. So you may have to buy a Series X to get the disc capability, which, yeah, paying that extra $100 is probably still worth it. You're just going to run into enough used copies of games still. Like, at some level, Series X games maybe would stop being traded in, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Just activate every effect. Yeah, I really don't know how this deck works, but I think the general idea. Seems like there might be a trick around this, where if I summon this and use this effect, I might be able to summon something that would have a different effect that it might be cancelled. Yep, I'm screwed, it seems like. Need to probably wrap up playing for today. Today's going to be a long stream anyways. Team Ninja has come back to clarify the comments as far as a Ninja Gaiden or Dead or Alive reboot. Like many of our dedicated fans, we share the enthusiasm for the returning to these titles, but basically the rest of the comment says is that we don't have anything to announce at this time. Which, yeah, they basically created a stir, or their fandom themselves directly created a stir around the idea of Ninja Gaiden games and Dead or Alive reboot games without having actually anything approved or anything to say. So that's probably a great example of just bad news, because you've now created a disappointment in your fandom that can't be satisfied, where it would have probably made a lot more sense to just it probably would have made a lot more sense to just have nothing, a no comment response to any rumors. A general we don't comment on rumors or speculation as a response would have severely hurt the idea of people putting out an article around a reboot. Let's see. Moving on, according to Video Games Chronicles, The Witcher 3's director's new studio has secured investment from NetEase. Konrad Tomaszkiewicz. Those funding will last was the last missing piece needed to go full throttle. So NetEase, I believe, is a Chinese company funding Rebel Wolves, co-founded by the Witcher 3 game and arts director. I suppose it is worth mentioning that, though, that the person who was a big name in Witcher 3's development doesn't even work at CD Projekt Red anymore, so any potential hype around Witcher 4 should be tempered by that. That being said, I guess you have to assume that the team that made Witcher 3 is the good team, because Witcher 1 and Witcher 2 were made by completely different companies, and they were a lot rougher, very much earlier games. But then whoever transferred over from Witcher 3 to work on CD Projekt Red is definitely not looking very good now, for Cyberpunk 2077 looking so terrible. So this is one of those great examples where you can live in blind faith and hope that Rebel Wolves has all the good team from Witcher 3, and whatever game they make is going to be great. Although being funded by NetEase, there is also a slight concern there. Or you could live in complete negativity and say that guy didn't matter at all, and all the good people are still at CD Projekt Red and working on Witcher 4. And neither one of those opinions really matter much. The smarter move is to simply not care at all until you actually see a game announced and you actually see footage of the game. Because we just don't know, and we just won't know. Moving on, the company that revived the Xbox Duke, which was the original Xbox controller, which I don't believe is the controller that looks like this. This is an Xbox 360 controller, although it does have extra buttons. They are now bringing back the Xbox 360 controller, but this isn't the original Xbox 360 controller either. If I'm recalling correctly, it's the problem with it is the D-pad is different. And they're effectively, I guess, trying to make an argument that this concave D-pad is just by de facto the best D-pad, so they're not going back to the actual plus sized D-pad that was in the original, or plus shaped D-pad that was originally there, on top of the extra buttons. It's really just that this is a color scheme. And frankly, there's... did it originally have a raised concave D-pad? Interesting. Maybe that was to get around the Nintendo thing. Nintendo patent. It may have been. I could have sworn that it originally had more of a plus side shape to it. But, you know, who knows? I can't remember. I did play the Xbox 360 quite a bit. So I should know what the controllers look like, but they all blur together. White is a dumb color palette. And see, this is a real photo of it, so it has the headset connector, the proprietary headset connector on the bottom, whereas imagine this will be changed to either a USB-C or just a mini stereo jack connector solely. Hyperkin is making this, and really it's just a gimmick more than anything else. I guess all I'm doing here is getting some special summons in. I probably need to stop playing. Let's see. Call of Duty Warzone mobile gameplay video reveals smaller multiplayer modes. If you're interested in that, check it out on check out this article on Video Games Chronicles. Apparently, Pokemon Squashmallows, which I guess are really big stuffed or lightly stuffed characters, are now available. Really bad time to be releasing any Pokemon merchandising, as there's, I think, people actually getting refunds even from the most recent Pokemon game for it being so incredibly buggy. And the fact that Nintendo is potentially giving out refunds is surprising. It almost seems intentional now that Nintendo of Japan said they won't honor the warranties if players are rude, if customers are rude. But the two are not really connected, because they were talking more about hardware warranties if the Japanese customers were being rude. They weren't talking about refunds on games. So if it was actually preemptive attempt to make the customers be nicer when asking for a refund for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, or try to scare off some people from asking for refunds, they would have said specifically on video games. And in this case, Nintendo can really just blame Game Freak and just claim that Pokemon is not actually a first-party title, even though almost everybody would argue that it is actually a first-party title, because Nintendo owns the Pokemon company in part. Game Freak is just not good at making games. I'll fully agree with that, but Nintendo has let this happen. Nintendo had to have known that Scarlet and Violet was incredibly buggy. Call of Duty Modern Warfare is on sale for Black Friday. This is just another example of Call of Duty Modern Warfare either being really good clickbait for Video Games Chronicles, or them getting straight up bribes to promote it, because there's a lot of games that are on sale. Like even this list here, as far as the Walmart Black Friday deals, have God of War Ragnarok and just the consoles, and a Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Console Bundle. Target, I think, has about the best deal, where I think you can get it was either a Xbox Series X, or it was a Switch OLED, and you can get that at its normal price and get a $50 Target gift card. So basically $50 off the average retail price. I have run into a slight problem in that I accidentally bought 2 coats so far. I bought a coat and then realized that through the process of ordering it, I selected the wrong size, and then I tried to cancel the order and order another coat, and they're straight up just like saying that they couldn't cancel it fast enough, or at least that's what they're indicating, is that they didn't try to cancel it. And this may be the new new scam, on top of several of the other scams, is the idea of never really honoring cancellations, and making it more difficult to cancel an order before it's even shipped, and making it more difficult to return an order. It's going to be fairly difficult to return this coat in a quick amount of time. I'm going to have to wait probably a week or so after Black Friday, because it's just going to be crazy to stand in line. And jackets, coats, they were $100 each, so it's barely worth it to stand in line at that price. I know a lot of people, $100 is a lot of money, certainly, but you know, I could probably just give the coat to somebody else and be happy as giving it away as a gift. But ideally, I think I'll just return it. It was actually a pretty good deal, assuming everything works in it, because it has heating elements and runs off a USB battery pack, and it was about half off from allegedly what the retail price was on Walmart. I imagine the batteries are a year into a 2-year lifespan, so you may have to replace the USB charging pack fairly quickly for that, and that's why it's on sale. But yeah, everything would really have to work there. Hopefully everything works. Like, if the heating elements don't really heat much, and it's just like you're slightly warm, even when it's on full blast, that would be a problem. If the coat is just particularly poor quality as far as the stitching and falls apart. I have another coat, and this has nothing to do with video games, that I almost never wear a coat anyways, so I have had one that I had in high school, so many decades. Like, yeah, probably two and a half decades I've had this coat, and it's perfectly fine because I've only worn it a dozen times, so barely justifiable to buy a new coat at all. Anyways, moving back to video game news. Okay, here's that sale I was talking about. Target's 250 Xbox Series X Black Friday deal also includes a $50 gift card. So normally this would be priced at $300. You get it for $250 and get a $50 gift card. But it is the Series S, which is a discless version. And I just can't recommend people buying the discless version. And Black Friday would be like the worst time to try to negotiate anything. Like, you're probably not going to get a manager to say, hey, maybe you could give me a $50 gift card and $50 off of the Series X, which that's really what you would like to do, even if they were willing to do that. Like, I think more likely what they would do is just give you a rain check, and this would be after potentially standing in line and doing the whole Black Friday in person stuff, which is insanity. Moving on, UK regulators are investigating Apple and Google's duopoly on the mobile ecosystem. At a certain level, I guess they do naturally have a duopoly, but I don't know if they've actively moved to create a duopoly, which could then lead to them being considered guilty of anything, at least in the United States law. Maybe in the UK law it's a little bit different, and just a duopoly naturally occurring is enough. Inherently, there's, I think, very little that could be done to make a third competitor. It would be very much just like T-Mobile compared to AT&T and Verizon in the United States, where T-Mobile is just known as the third tier, garbage tier cell phone provider. And then there's a lot of other companies that use T-Mobile's service, like Mint Mobile. But naturally, I think a lot of people do jump between either Verizon or AT&T. And I don't know if the UK government or any government really has has the ability to create competition. Inherently, I think economically, you could make a very good argument to say that in the same way they use this cliche of the governments don't create jobs, which is bold. They do totally create jobs, at least government jobs. You could say the governments could punish success, and they're fairly good at that. So they could just put companies in higher tax brackets if they have less competition. It would be full of loopholes, I'm sure, and very difficult to prove, but yeah, you could certainly see the UK government just fining Apple and Google for having a duopoly a insignificant amount of money every year, every month. If they do anything crazier, it would be like put those fines in a fund to fund competition. And really what the UK would like is to have a UK company running an app store, and that's not likely to happen. There's not going to be a BBC app store or a Sky TV app store that would really compete against Apple and Google. The UK also, there's calls for potentially a second referendum to join the European Union, which, in the middle of the whole Ukraine-Russia thing, I mean, maybe that would convince people to rejoin the European Union. In a lot of ways, I guess the idea of the European Union moving towards unifying Europe in a almost United States-like way and having its own standing army may have been the right decision after all. But I still don't think the member states of the European Union really want to become one big united Europe country under Germany's rule or control, which is what was going on there. The refugee issue of taking in refugees and just placing them anywhere is still, I imagine, a hot topic issue, even when I imagine the refugees now may be Ukrainian. That doesn't have much to do with video games, so let's keep on moving forward. Yeah, the PlayStation 5 DualSense controllers are $20 or £20 off for Black Friday. Peripherals being discounted at various retailers. $20 off though does not get you down to $20, though you're still paying a very high price for the PlayStation controllers, which you will serve yourself quite nicely by getting used to the Xbox controllers layout and only playing with that, whether you're playing on an Xbox or a PC, compared to the extra PlayStation controllers, which are just more expensive. And I don't think anybody can really jump between the two controller layouts very well. You have to get used to one and just live with that one. And I don't think they have any intention on drastically changing the layouts of controllers until they go to full VR for all games, and then the controllers will change. 4 of Square Enix Montreal's mobile games, including Deus Ex, are shutting down. The studio was renamed to Onoma last month before being shut down. Now, what's weird about this is I don't know what they mean particularly by being shut down, because there was like DLC you could get for Deus Ex Go, but it was a single player experience. I thought Arena Battle Champions, I think, is more of a multiplayer game, so I can see that. Hitman Sniper the Shadows, I think, is a single player experience. And Space Invaders, the Hidden Heroes, I think is a multiplayer experience, is a single player experience. All 4 games will be removed from the iOS app and Google Play Store on December 1st. Players who already own the games will be able to continue playing them until January 4th, 2023, at which point they will lose access. Effectively, immediately all in-game purchases are stopped. We encourage prior in-game purchases to be used before January 4th as they will not be refunded. Yeah, they are really just shutting it down, I guess. Which that sucks because I own some of these games on Steam, but I don't know if this affects the Steam versions. Like, this is kind of a great example of them just not wanting to make any profit whatsoever. They are going to probably try and bankrupt that company. And the trailer here, it's not really showing anything. It's just a long backward trailer. I must have, maybe I played Hitman Sniper, and Hitman Sniper The Shadows is a sequel to that. Yeah, it probably is, because it says it came in 2021. And maybe that is only on mobile. It's just actively try and destroy monsters. I think this will be our last game for today. Yep, that sounds pretty crazy to shut down revenue, potential revenue, and it never really makes a lot of sense either, because it really can't cost that much to keep a server running. And now we're starting to see a case where Embracer Group is looking like a lot of other companies, like particularly Hollywood companies, where somebody new becomes in charge of the company, and they just cancel all the projects out of ego more than anything else. Because you get all the blame if a project that was greenlit by a previous producer fails, and you get none of the acclaim if it succeeds. And yeah, that's an ego decision. Noticeably, CW, I heard, was just bought by Nexstar, and they've canceled a whole bunch of shows, which, in all fairness, CW has never made profit, so yeah, it's not super surprising. I need to win more duels and just duel more in general. Let's go ahead and clean this up. Nine more duels in the next 5 days is doable. Winning 6 more duels is probably doable. But yeah. Let's go back here and just highlight this. Getting up to where we need to go is questionable, though. We want to get to 5,500 to get this loop of destruction, which I really don't care about. Ideally, I'm much more interested in just getting up to 11,000 to get more gems. If I have to start compromising 8,000 to get this 200 bonus, or at least 5,000 to get this 300 bonus. At the moment, we're at 3,750, and when we hit 4,000, we'll get another 50. So we made, I think, a decent amount of progress just today by actually getting some victories. Probably it's a case that people are getting tired of this festival, so worse players are coming in and just surrendering. At a certain level, if I was just had a ton of free time and just wanted to help people, I would just go in there and surrender. over and over again. And I suppose you could use bots if you could get away with that, to just have thousands of bots that would auto surrender. Then we are still also moving forward. We've got plenty of time to get from level 31 all the way up to level 100. This will happen very naturally. Let's focus on the news though. The Callisto Protocol Season Pass is going to include new player death animations, which is an interesting thought as far as extra content or DLC content, but it still is wrapped around the poopy packaging of being a season pass and extra content or DLC content. And season pass is interesting in particular. The phrase season pass has been abused almost from day one, almost always. Like, very few games have a season 2 where it would make sense for it to be called a season pass. We just haven't really thought of a better term. They don't want to say all access pass, which would sound nicer, because they don't want to promise that all content would in the future be involved in that. The potential other things that could be in a season pass for Callisto Protocol could be worse. Like if there were more levels, more story, more characters, guns that made the game play a lot better, and then the game turned out to be too difficult without the DLC content. Those could all really hurt the experience. Resident Evil 4 being so old that it couldn't have a season pass and DLC highlights the better way in which games should be made, in which guns with infinite ammo should be unlocked after beating the game the first time to let people goof around, not included in DLC that you could buy and use in your first playthrough and ruin your initial experience. Let's see. We saw the surface level of this. I'm not sure if we ever got down to what was actually said. Crystal Dynamics has revoked the Avengers lead designer's spokesperson role due to offensive tweaks. Brian Wagner's old posts are incredibly disappointing to see, end quote, the studio says. Yeah. There's a slight effort I also heard of from Reset Era mostly to cancel to convince people to boycott the new Harry Potter game that's still in development, and that they did actually successfully cancel somebody who posted a bunch of like old edgelord type tweets, is basically what I can tell, as far as there was a director that was in charge of the Harry Potter game a few months ago, and they canceled him and he quit and retired early because of a harassment campaign against him and an effort to cancel him. So video games still being one of the few places where cancel culture and cancel attempts actually do sometimes work, and as soon as it works once, that there's more effort to do it more. Inherently, the argument to boycott the Harry Potter games, I think, are somewhat true. Like, there's a lot of lies and a lot of disinformation, but at some level, the argument that supporting Harry Potter in any way does bring up the clout of the Harry Potter creator, and if you don't support the Harry Potter creator, then you probably shouldn't support Harry Potter content, because if she gets more clout, then she potentially gets more jobs, which then gives her more money to say the things she says and fund the people she funds. And so it really is just going to come down to, can you separate the art from the artist and play the game, because most kids don't care and don't know anything about the Harry Potter creator and all the controversies around her, and just want to play a Harry Potter game, which actually, in the video I was watching, I saw way more explanation as to what this new Harry Potter game is, and it looks a lot better compared to what I've seen from regular articles. And in part, that may be an active case of propaganda like censorship amongst even the video game articles, news sites that I follow, and that they aren't putting out as many news presses around the Harry Potter game as there should be, and they're not talking about it that much. At a certain level, Harry Potter is a kid's game. Kids are going to want to play it. You got, in that case in particular, you get a extra special exemption to just turn a blind eye to it. Disney, in comparison, is fairly well known to be anti-Semitic, and that his whole Epcot concept, in part, I think, was an attempt originally to create a cult-like area where the future of it would show the world of tomorrow with only people that look like Disney in it, and a lot of that failed, certainly, but like at the same point, Disney's been dead for a while, and maybe time and death heals a lot of wounds, but it would be ridiculous to not show your kids Cinderella or Alice in Wonderland cartoons, movies, just because Disney was alive and involved at the time. And so I definitely do see it more as a special exception compared to if Harry Potter was an adult series and these were all adult games around Harry Potter, then maybe there would be more of a logical reason to boycott. But honestly, you should by default just be boycotting any game until it comes out and you see the reviews are good. You maybe be a little bit more cautious around it, in the sense that maybe some reviews will be just review bombing. Let's see. Here's apparently what the Avengers guy says. The tweets have since been removed but were reposted by other users as spotted by Rock Paper Shotgun, and included a racist comment posted in 2014 and a post making a slur aimed at disabled people. So the R word, retarded, I imagine is what was said here. And then as far as saying something is a racist comment, that could be any gambit of anything at all. Seems like basically 2 words, 2 sentences is the reason why this person has lost their job. Also, 2014 would have been well over 8 years ago. So somebody's losing their job for something they did 8 years ago. That doesn't seem fair either. Now, if this was inherently in the heart and soul of Brian, then he would have been saying or doing things within the company that they were aware of, and maybe he is, and they're just not. They just ignored it and let it happen. But yeah, it would have made a lot more sense in today's day and age to let people go quietly if they have that kind of attitude, instead of keeping them around until a hate mob finds them and goes after them. I don't think they actually fired this guy. They just reassigned him, basically, which that is probably the right response. But yeah, if anything, Twitter potentially going out of business may save the world. I don't think it's crazy 5D chess that Elon Musk is playing or anything like that, but Elon's own chaos that he's adding to Twitter that may lead to Twitter being shut down may create a lot less hate getting stirred up on the internet, and it may get rid of a lot of evidence of comments that somebody said offhandedly without even really thinking that are now currently being used against people. And obviously my best advice for a new generation is always use aliases, never use your real name, never stand behind anything, be a little weasel, and have no guts to say anything online, because even if you think you can take on any criticism, the criticism will just be a million times fold a decade later. You never know, you might end up being the next president or running for the next presidency. So yeah, just don't allow records to be caught up. Be anonymous as much as possible. In a lot of ways, I think that probably would have fixed Twitter as a service anyways, is if companies were not anonymous, but then by default all users that were just individuals were anonymized, particularly when making public posts. That wouldn't make the most sense with friends and family, but that there really should just be a big separation between here's a friend, here's a family member, and here's a public company. Moving on, I've really got to burn through the news fairly quickly today. Netflix is hiring talent for a brand new AAA PC game. The company's new LA studios, led by Overwatch's executive producer. Netflix potentially getting into AAA PC games probably is a good idea. It might waste them a lot of money, but it puts a finger in a different pie, where right now Netflix is all about streaming. I don't think they're making any money or even involved with the companies that is shipping DVDs, if they're still doing that. But yeah, they're all about streaming. They have some mobile games that don't really matter, and they have some interactive experiences that don't really matter. But yeah, for them to potentially balance out a bad quarter of streaming and monthly charges from owning Netflix, they could balance that out with a video game every now and then. That would be great. Netflix also arguably should think about doing podcasts, and maybe even creating a service where people like me could upload videos, or also even just selling ebooks. Maybe not getting directly into physical books shipping and selling, because that would be too expensive, but I could see Netflix having a Bookflix ebook service competing with Amazon, and just maybe even an Instagram like photography streaming for where you could get different people's Instagram feeds of photos. The Flix name is recognizable, so the net part, I guess maybe you would actually call it netbook, or yeah. It's funny that I wanted to change the first part around this. You probably just call it Netflix books, Netflix music, Netflix podcast, things like that, Netflix games. That would be a smarter way to go. Let's see. Moving on. Video Games Chronicle says Sony claims Microsoft's true strategy is to make PlayStation like Nintendo. The company argues that Xbox will become the home of first-person shooting games if its Activision deal is approved. What? It's an odd thought, because how does Sony PlayStation really see itself, and how does it really see itself different from Nintendo? Like Nintendo has Splatoon 3 just out relatively recently. So first person shooting games do exist on Nintendo. They are very Nintendo like. If PlayStation had the kind of character recognition that Nintendo had, PlayStation would almost certainly be ecstatic around that if there was a Mario like character or a Smash Brothers game that actually succeeded. Like, by far, particularly in Japan, PlayStation is second fiddle to Nintendo, and they'd love to be like Nintendo. So they're kind of talking out of both sides of their mouths when they say, "Oh well, Xbox is going to turn PlayStations into just the kid console that doesn't have first-person shooters." What's funny here, though, is that they are actively pushing this one narrative around Modern Warfare 2, and they haven't been able to push any other thought. Like the entirety of the Activision Blizzard acquisition seems to be obsessed around Call of Duty, which is effectively having them give up the ground on any argument around like any of Activision Blizzard's other games. Like Hearthstone, for instance, I don't think is on PlayStation when it totally could have been, and they just didn't care about it. Like any Diablo games, some of them are on PlayStation and Xbox, but a lot of them aren't. Like, if anything, it's much more likely that we'll see a lot of Activision Blizzard's games go from being PC exclusives to being console games, at least on the Xbox, if not also on the PlayStation. I could see Microsoft straight up just saying, we want to put Hearthstone on the PlayStation. There's no reason for it not to be on the PlayStation. It should be on the Switch too. But yeah, this story has gotten fairly stale and boring at this point, because they're just going all out on a PR attack, and there's just no real reason for it. Moving on, God of War Ragnarok is PlayStation's fastest selling first party game ever, which, okay, yeah. There wasn't a lot of competition, certainly, but it also was highly anticipated. People were ravenous, and I think it's worth pointing out just how ravenous, which this picture works well for the word ravenous, just how crazy excited people were for God of War Ragnarok, and how weird it is that doesn't really translate to any voices I hear as far as actual reviews of the game or actual people talking about the game and saying they like the game. So either people are in this first week still just playing the game, which is possible, very possible, or they're playing the game and now just experiencing the game instead of having hype around it. In all fairness, I imagine the first week of Elden Ring didn't have that much as far as commentary around it either, and there was a lot of enthusiasm and ravenous fandom who couldn't wait for Elden Ring to be released. Let's see. Sony claiming Activision's deal could hurt developers and lead to price rises. Let's see. Xbox and PlayStation don't expect to launch new consoles until at least 2028, documents reveal. Well, geez, if that is the case, now would be just the absolute perfect time to get the Xbox Series X. In all fairness, though, now is really a great time to get an Xbox Series X. I guess if you really want a PlayStation 5, also get that. Definitely get the disc versions of both, though. Like, both of the hardware in these consoles are very good, and you're going to struggle to be anywhere in the same price range to make a PC that can parallel them. PC gaming still will be cheaper through Steam sales, and I still kind of would lean towards PC gaming, but I can't really recommend Steam Decks as your main PC first and foremost. You need a good PC so that you can stream games to a Steam Deck in your house first. But the components and the part shortages almost certainly have slowed down the process of them trying to develop anything new. This does give a potential breather to Nintendo to release a new Switch, and potentially gives a breather for Xbox and PlayStation and anyone else to try and involve augmented reality, virtual reality, or just do something crazy out of the blue. Smell-o-vision, vibrating chairs, an actual emphasis on having surround sound equipment. It wouldn't be crazy these days for them to have added a speaker here where the fan grill is and all the air is being blown out. If there had been a Bluetooth speaker functionality here where it could hear you and do like an Alexa-like device response, but also could be a center speaker, or a subwoofer even. Subwoofer would be crazy if it had a hard drive in it, but I guess it doesn't, and the disk drives don't really even spin when you're playing, so you could basically put a subwoofer in an Xbox controller, Xbox console. But yeah, some kind of center channel or up-firing speaker would be an interesting twist, but that's about it. Bluetooth speaker functionality and just having that extra functionality makes a lot of sense. Having a clock maybe on the front is a little crazy, but not super crazy to just combine devices. Having it be able to control ambient lighting so that you could plug in LEDs and it would be able to change the color of LEDs either around your room or behind your TV would be a great idea. And there probably is a standard that they're working on, if it doesn't already exist, where HDMI could tell a TV that has ambient lighting to do that, because that would be a next big thing. But yeah, you could really work on some gimmicks instead of working on the next console. They could also just try and reduce the price of things in general. What is this pop-up? It wants me to reset, I guess. I don't like that just popped up like that. Let's move on with the news. CD Projekt Red has showcased Witcher 3's next-gen update, which, okay, check out that video. I'm sure it looks amazing. FIFA 2023 is going to be on sale on Black Friday. I imagine in part it's going to be on sale because of a lot of unhappiness with FIFA, with the whole Qatar World Cup going on, and Qatar being a Muslim theocracy, really just highlighting their inability to cope with the rest of the world or be in line with the values of the rest of the world. Which, yeah, at a certain point you can't be a part of the world if you're too obsessed with rainbow flags not being shown or alcohol not being sold to foreigners. Honestly, if you're that obsessed about enforcing the religious rules, which who knows if it's through actual conviction, religious conviction, or just theocratic pushing of control, if you're so obsessed about doing that, you probably can't succeed in anything as a country or as an individual. I definitely have seen people who are obsessed with religion, their religion, and that's all they think about and all they talk about, and every single thing in the world has to be seen through that tiny little viewpoint. And yeah, they can't be successful because they can't think outside of a box they've created for themselves that is incredibly, incredibly small. Moving on, though. Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet has Nintendo's biggest launch ever with 10 million sales, which unfortunately I can't help but assume that that's 10 million very disappointed kids. And in part, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these sales are going directly into wrapping paper for Christmas gifts, and so that these kids aren't even going to know they have the game until December 25th, and you can only have a small amount of hope that a patch will be out to fix a lot of the bugs before then. Nintendo, if it wants to do right by its customers, should have announced already that a patch was incoming and that they were targeting a patch before December 25th to fix the bugs. But if Nintendo was going to do anything, or Game Freak was going to do anything, they wouldn't have released the game in the first place, or they would have announced that there are some bugs and that a patch will be incoming. Let's see. And then our final Video Games Chronicle article for today says the FTC is likely, quote, likely to file an antitrust lawsuit to block the Microsoft Activision deal, a report claims. The case could be reportedly brought against the deal as soon as next month. Who is the... According to three sources cited by Politico, FTC Chair Lena Khan is looking to rein in the power of the world's largest tech companies. The report goes on to state that while the lawsuit challenging the deal is uncertain, several within the FTC are skeptical of the company's arguments. So Politico is reporting this from three sources that they're not pointing out who the three sources are in this article that is mostly just reposting another person on Politico's article. That is different, certainly, from the headline, in that this is very much written like the FTC has come out and said, quote, that they are likely to file an antitrust lawsuit. And yeah, I'm not super surprised that a lawsuit, I wouldn't be surprised one bit if a lawsuit gets filed and then immediately gets shot down in the courts, and then it gets approved and everything is hunky-dory. Like, it feels like there's just too much momentum around this Activision Blizzard acquisition. And if Activision Blizzard didn't get acquired by Microsoft, I wouldn't be surprised if, instead of it just staying around, that they immediately go into liquidation style bankruptcy and sell up the companies piecemeal by piecemeal, and then Microsoft just acquires most of the components and most of the parts of Activision while not getting all of it. Moving on, let's see. We're at the Komatsu articles. Guilty Gear Strive character Sen Kisuke announced. We already talked about that last stream. We've already talked about the golf update. A Telnet shooting collection, Telenet shooting, has been announced for Switch. This looks like side-scrolling shooter games and old games from the 1990s. These were Genesis and PC Engine games. So very much, these were Japanese games, pretty much only sold in Japan. This was the one where the cover image is basically a naked lady with a convenient military plane covering everything up. So yeah, Gungrave Gore is now available. Launch day interview with Studio Iggy Mob. I guess if you want to check out this article, check it out on Komatsu. Seeing some screenshots of Gungrave Gore. The Gungrave Gore probably is one of these games that Western mainstream video game journalists are not going to bother to talk about at all, and they will get no coverage, even if it's a great game. So I would say probably keep a special eye out for it, and just, if it's on Steam, it says it's on PC, so it probably is on Steam. check out for user reviews. This is the first orthodox sequel since 2004. But yeah, it looks nice, but I haven't seen a lot of gameplay around it. It's probably worth mentioning also, I've managed to not listen to any Giant Bombcast in 3 or 4 weeks, which I think I may be finally starting the process of breaking myself from listening to Giant Bomb, which doesn't mean I've really replaced it with anything else as far as people talking about video games. I've just decided to do other things. Famitsu review scores here help us out. Goat Simulator 3 getting 33 out of 40, which is about average. And then Gungrave Gore getting a 29 out of 40, which tells me it's actually really bad. And then Monomushi Su Gladiator getting a 28 out of 40, which tells me it's pretty bad. And then Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl getting a 28 out of 40, which tells me it's pretty bad. So kind of a bad week all around for games, where Goat Simulator is getting the only high marks. Or, you know, All-Star Brawl getting 4 7s, which equals 20 out of 40, might mean it's average, but generally speaking, I want to hold games to a higher quality than that, and I would want to see at least 30 before I'd even start to think about a game being considered good from Famitsu. It's not super surprising that bad games would be released, as we're so close to Black Friday and Christmas, even in Japan, and we're close to the end of the year. Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl doing poorly leaves less hope, certainly. And then Multiversus has like a lot of microtransactions, so we've still yet to see a Smash Brothers clone that doesn't immediately drop the ball. A game called Lost Soul Aside is going to be published by Sony Interactive Entertainment. I don't know if I've heard anything about this game. In a lot of ways, it looks somewhat like Forspoken, for what little we've seen of Forspoken, but yeah. It seems to me, what's the publisher here? Ultra Zero Games is the developer. Seems like Sony is showing that it very easily could fund more first-party titles and third-party titles and get potential exclusives if they wanted to, and that they aren't completely reliant on Modern Warfare. Yep. When I see a trailer like this, I mean, this could be as good as Nier Automata in its gameplay and story, or it could just be very similar to Final Fantasy games. You have a guy that looks like he's in like real world clothes and then got sent to another world, and he's got a companion floating creature behind him, which there's been several games like that where somebody gets magic and then they have a companion character floating behind him. Forspoken is a girl that's sent to another world and gets magic powers and has a magical bracelet. A game called Convaleria is going to be published by Sony Interactive Entertainment also, so there must have been just a collection of announcements. It's very possible. Yeah, you have a very different picture here, just a girl in the dress and then a person completely in sci-fi space gear. It's very possible what happened here is that these are new partnerships being announced with Chinese companies, and that these are attempts at AAA Chinese games. Sony had a program and I know they just revived the program, and so this might be from that Chinese developer program that we're getting these announcements. The problem with Sony's attempt, which I did a couple years ago, to fund and have more Chinese developers make AAA games, or make games specifically for the PlayStation, is that none of those games really ever came out and got finished, and there just hasn't been enough time, and they probably just paused the program more because of the pandemic than anything else. This Long Force with two O's as a company is yet another developer company I've never heard of. A multiplayer extraction shooter called Hawked has been announced for basically everything except for the Switch, according to Gamatsu. Now we've got all of these trailers. I think at this point it would be a little ridiculous to try and shop fully on this stream, but maybe we could show off what's on sale very quickly. Fire Emblem Engaging with Emblems trailer is available if you want to check that out on Gamatsu. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot DLC Bardock Alone Against Fate Battle of Planet Kanasa gameplay if you want to check that out. Rebel Worlds has acquired a strategic investment from NetEase. We already talked about that. A third-person platform fighter called Divine Knockout launches December 6th for basically everything except for the Switch. The meme of Switch ports, or just the absolute success of people actually making Switch ports of new games, is probably going to die, and Nintendo really should announce a new Switch somewhere around February or March, just to have twice the amount of power, because they really need to at least double the amount of CPU, GPU power in the Switch and space and things. It can't be a minimal, let's just upgrade the OLED concept. And yeah, I still think a box that would stream video to a regular Switch but was way more powerful might be the best way to have both worlds for Nintendo, just to make something that is like an Xbox Series X that connects directly to a TV, does 2K, 4K, does way more power processing, has a lot more storage, but then has video streaming to a regular Switch that most people would already own, so you can play remotely. I think that would work nicely for them. Let's see. Sherlock Holmes The Awakened remake. What is this game trailer? So that's a funny name for a trailer. This Sherlock Holmes character doesn't particularly look much like Sherlock Holmes to me, but yeah. The bigger problem is all the Sherlock Holmes games so far have been pretty bad. Let's see, the Invincible documentary Life on Regis 3. I guess I kind of need to see this just to see what kind of game this is. Seems like this trailer is mostly just showing environments and landscapes. Yeah, that's pretty much a teaser trailer, so I didn't get any information from that. The Outbound Ghost launches November 30th for the PS4 and PS5 and December 1st for Switch, and shortly thereafter for Xbox Series and Xbox One. This looks like it is a flat cardboard cutout kind of adventure game. It's a Phantom-based paper RPG that is currently available on PC. Let's see. So let's click this. Mostly positive, although teetering, and mixed in the last 30 days. Well, I'm going to leave this on the follow list, but it doesn't seem like it's really going in the right direction as far as people being excited around that game. A game called Everspace 2 Early Access Final Update The Ancient Rifts is now available. Which, okay, we'll leave it at that. PlayStation China Hero Project Phase 3 is going to include 10 more titles. This is the project I was talking about. I forgot the name of it. So, Lost Soul Aside and Convaleria. Do they have the list of the other titles? These two games were games from the first and second phases of the China Hero Project, so they basically have one successful game from 2 attempts, and I know for a fact that they were funding a lot more than just one project. The concept is just dumb, and it highlights a stupidity in either Sony of California or stupidity in Sony of Japan. And I don't know who I could blame it on, but I'd probably lean towards blaming it on Jim Ryan and Sony of California to think that you can do business with China at this point. Like, it's just like, you just can't. The government's too much of a problem. Even if you're just hiring game developers in China to release games outside of China, there's just too much of a risk, too much of instability there to trust that. Plus, there's not really a lot of skill as far as developing games in China, so wouldn't do it. And yet, Sony is. Maybe these are just straight up bribes, and they know that these games will never sell, and that they're just trying to establish relationships early for some potential future China that does embrace video games. And maybe they are playing some kind of long-term strategy that way, but I don't know if I really believe that. Let's see. God of War Ragnarok sold 5.1 million units in its first week, became the fastest selling first-party title in PlayStation history. Pretty much all you talked about that. Let's see. Witcher Wild 3 Complete Edition Next Gen Update trailer. If you want to check that out on Gamatsu. And Pokemon Scarlet Violet sold 10 million copies in the first 3 days. Alright, so now we have a slight issue in that I don't think the thing that didn't work. This game is free if you're interested in it. Also, Steam Awards, where you can name games for Steam Awards. I'll have to do that. And then on Friday I'll probably highlight that. But a lot of sales going on, a lot of nominating the Steam Awards. This is pretty much all the Black Friday sales have been in the past couple of years on Steam, is the games are on sale and you get some trading cards if you nominate things for the Steam Awards. Yeah, I think the fall list worked today. And but it did seem like there might be a slightly higher amount of new games that we cycled through. I think they've changed the list a little bit, because there's this little warning as far as all the new games that says my preferences have eliminated like 1,000 games, and almost certainly that's because they're Chinese language only, and the fact that there's only 1,000 Chinese language only games. But then it says, however, none of these games would have been on the first page of the search results anyway, so since all the new games would be on the first page, this one's mostly negative already, so we can skip it. Are we going to see any adult content games today? Possibly, but I also wouldn't really hold my breath to expect to see anything. And so far, we've seen a lot of maybe type games with not a lot to really say. Yep. I am also wasting a lot of time still as far as the accountability section. I didn't even mention it. I watched Daniel Spellbound, which is a cartoon, after watching a Russian movie around Hansel and Gretel secret magical containment group. What's funny is this seems like this would be an adult content game, but there's no mature content warning. It's just, I guess, lewd. Doesn't look like it's actually a good game. And I am trying to potentially watch Big Mouth, which the Big Mouth series always visually looks so ugly that it just never made me interested in watching it. And I know the reason, that they're intentionally trying to make the kids look ugly, but it just doesn't work, really. If anything, instead of the Big Mouth character designs, I would have just had the characters be 10, 11, 12-year-old kids drawn as adults. Kind of like the opposite of, there's this one movie where they have a bunch of kid actors play gangsters. It's kind of a joke. Do the opposite of that. That probably would have worked better. Yep, and just trying to burn through all of this. I'm also probably wasting at least 30 minutes of my time every week watching the subtitled new Bleach episodes, which the animation is just awful there. This is the whole section when the animation is awful. And it's really not doing anything very quickly. Although arguably it's trying to move fairly quickly, it's just not going to accomplish it. Kind of feels like if they were going to do more Bleach, they needed to probably do it in the form of 1 or 2 movies. Even a movie that ends on a to be continued, like the Neon Genesis Evangelion reboot movies do. Bleach is kind of such a terrible anime series anyways. You get into it and it's alright at the beginning, but then it just becomes way too long and gets pretty bad. I think Naruto in a lot of ways probably went the same way, but I haven't actually watched Naruto, so I don't know. I'm getting a lot of duplicate tabs, I don't know why. Here we have a pure text-based game. It's been a while since we've seen one of these. Tea House of the Gods. And we're seeing more Backrooms games. There might be something to this. I might just actively have competing A/B testing as far as what the text title is on the YouTube Shorts, which I guess opens the idea. Do I want to play a game called Social Credit Simulator? No. That's probably more of a political comment than a game. So I guess I could try to think of a third phrase and potentially even make a third row of YouTube Shorts. That there is definitely a possibility if these YouTube Shorts are always 2-3 months ahead as far as their release when they're actually airing on my channel, then a third row if I just have more YouTube Shorts to show would kind of make some sense, if that can consistently be the case. Yeah, I don't know if there's a game here or not. The problem definitely comes about though that we're burning through games and yet leaving a lot of tabs open. I wish there was a better automated system around that. I'm gonna say no to this just preemptively. I mean, I guess you could give this a chance. Is this even really focused on single player though? No. Alright, I'll just be generous. I don't really have time to be that critical today. We only have a couple more games left anyways. And then Hentai Island almost got me as being adult content. But there is one screenshot here of these 3D colorful characters. Now, I would call this 3D CGI art style. It doesn't look very good, and for that reason, in part, I wouldn't really call it anime, but it is colorful in the art style. It is an adult-only game for $8.99. It's English and in Spanish, Spain Spanish, and Latin American Spanish. Seems like that really is the entire game, though, is that it is a low-effort RPG, open-world RPG, asset flip type game that just happens to also have at least one sex scene in it to try to sell that way. And in all fairness, the game may very well sell better because of that. It's a shame that there is such a divide, though, between something like The Witcher 3 that has sex scenes in it and then is really good, and then garbage asset flip games. I think is probably a puzzle escape to room game. I'll give it a chance. And yeah, I suspect with 3 more games to look at, that's the only adult game that's going to come out. So occasionally adult games do get released outside of the periods in which they get bundled together, but it seems fairly obvious that a lot of adult games get put in either a second review and then get released on the weekends, or they get bundled together in groups at some level and get released all at the same time. Releasing an adult game right now as the sale is starting would kind of make a lot of sense. Does this support English? Yes, it does. This is an adult only game. James Paris 2 La Fuente del Eterna Embargazia. Is this saying the penis of eternal embarrassment? Wait, no. But yeah. Yeah, apparently this is like a Leisure Suit Larry type game for $17.99. And it's English and Spanish full things. The content does not represent the actual opinions of the creators. Interesting. Yeah, and it compares a self-directed point-and-click adventure like Leisure Suit Larry, or Monkey Island, or the first James Paris. So I need to do some investigation here on this and figure out if the first game is on Steam, because then there might be something here this might be a game that is still YouTube friendly enough to actually play, and that might have something I'd like to cover, particularly in trying to compare it to like Leisure Suit Larry games, which I'd also like to play because they're historically relevant. Of course, if I'm going to play a Leisure Suit Larry game, it almost feels like that would have to be an extra thing I would schedule at a very late night time on top of a regular streaming content, which would mean I'd have to work faster and make more content, which I'm worse and worse at doing that these days. Then we have the GameDeveloper.com articles. Ireland launches a tax credit program to grow the country's gaming presence. In my general ignorant understanding of Ireland, I think any jobs they could bring to Ireland at all is a smart move for them. Is there going to be anything like unique about Irish culture that would change how games are developed in Ireland? Maybe a lot of people getting drunk and not like killing themselves with overwork like they do in the United States. That might be some of it, but that would be about it. I could imagine maybe the Ireland games, any game made in Ireland has a bit more of a pub culture to it, a little bit more of casual drinking in it, but then you still would run into the globalization censorship of never showing alcohol, so almost certainly the games would then be censored out of showing any alcohol. Like China, I would imagine that developing a game in Ireland would have the problem of not that many people being good at programming in Ireland and just not having the experience of making games in Ireland. Unlike China, however, I don't think that there's going to be any real problems with developing a game in Ireland, although there might be, because there might be blasphemy laws still in Ireland from like the Catholic Church, and there might, I'm just guessing here, I might be totally wrong about that, there might also be less freedom of speech protection in Ireland, because I know one of those countries has some like slander stuff. Like if it turned out you couldn't make a game about Nazis because in Ireland you can't show Nazi memorabilia, that would be a problem. That'd be a problem of developing that, like Wolfenstein in Germany too. But yeah, there's definitely, you'd have to do some research before you'd actually think about growing the gaming presence. More and more, there is also this admission I think a lot of countries are having to make that's saying people are going to have to go back to being artists way more than laborers, and that we don't need laborers, we have automation. And so now if any country is going to have anything that they can export and anything they can sell to continuously live in a capitalist society, it's going to have to be artists selling art to other artists in the form of video games or stories or paintings, and that probably won't work. But yeah, moving on, I don't want to get into a big rant. Again, I'm just shocked that you would scrap mobile games completely, but that's exactly what Embracer is doing, really living up to its name in no way by scrapping the games. Let's see. Playtika has sunk 25 million into a Turkish casual game studio called Ace Games. God of War Ragnarok sold 5.1 million copies during the launch week. Sony fears the impact of Microsoft acquisitions on PlayStation's business. All these articles not really worth reading again or covering. A new Microsoft filing indicates Elder Scrolls 6 may be Xbox exclusive. which, okay, that would be a little surprising, but not super surprising if it had, say, a 6-week to 6-month exclusivity window on Xbox. Almost certainly, though, it would be a full about face for Bethesda if Elder Scrolls 6 didn't try to sell itself on every single console and resell the game multiple times. Like, Skyrim is the only game that has probably been reported and resold as often as Resident Evil 4. I guess Skyrim slightly beats them out there in my mind. There might be some other games that have been ported and it just people don't think of them. But yeah. There really is very little reason to give any faith to Bethesda or Microsoft as far as the Elder Scrolls series. Anyways, we still need to figure out if their space game is good and sells well to even get the beginning of hope that the next Elder Scrolls game would be good. We are at this point kind of at a level where the only game worth playing in the Elder Scrolls series is 5, as far as Skyrim, because all the other games are too old and just too ugly. Moving on, Netflix's LA studio might be working on a non-mobile game, which they're less committal than Video Games Chronicle was. And then the FTC is, quote, likely to challenge Microsoft. Anyways, let's see, we've got Accident here, which is mostly positive. I will remember this game. I wanted it to actually be very good. It is arguably not it's not really the best looking idea of a game, in that it's just going to be car accidents and performing simple activities. This is kind of educational, I guess, more than anything experience. It definitely feels like the kind of game you would want to have your teenage kids play before they get their driver's license. Let's just say, hey, here's what you need to do, here's how you need to be prepared. I vaguely recall that this game either didn't have that many reviews or was kind of in the middle ground. And yeah, we're going through the A's on the fall list again. Abyss, Build to Destroy is a Bloombox clone type game. I think I can put that on the wish list. So I'm about to look at the idea of shopping, and this is a platforming game that I just don't think has enough relevancy, so I'm gonna remove it from the fall list, even though it is positively reviewed. I guess the question here would be, do I have About Love and Hate 1? This one was very positively reviewed and is on the wish list for good reason. So I feel like 2 probably does deserve. I wonder if, I don't think I've played this game yet. Yep, this is kind of an example of a game that came out in 2012, and Giant Bomb talked about it, and then I eventually bought it, and I haven't actually played it, and it probably highlights where I'm gonna just make an exception here and put this on the wish list, where Giant Bomb's push even in 2012 was not enough to last this game to its own sequel and its other games. Black Pants Studios, not a company that has said anything new or made any announcements recently, and I wouldn't be surprised if they've mostly gone out of business. New games companies are just not particularly successful. a roguelike monster taming RPG game, so like a Pokemon clone. I think in this case I'm going to say no, because like visually, I know you got to do something different so it doesn't just look completely like a Pokemon clone, even though that's what it is. But yeah, the backgrounds are too empty, and the variety of characters just seems to be too few, so I'm going to say no to that. This game I wanted to say yes to, but I think we have to say no, because more than likely this is an asset flip of a 3D model of a kid that looks really good in this one cutscene, and then there really isn't any game otherwise, or much of a game. The reviews seem to indicate that it's pretty bad. And there's like my time in Mara in comparison for a game where you play as a kid running around an island, and I think the reviews on that game are much better. This game is all mixed, so I gave this one a chance as a first-person shooter. I suspect as we get deeper and deeper down the fall list a second time, I will see more and more games that I gave a chance to just because I didn't want to make a decision. And it's going to be fairly obvious that they're not worth playing. This is a free student project, I believe. So I'll put this on the wish list because it's being published by a university. Although in all fairness, why am I putting free games on the wish list? I will deal with that, I guess, later. AD 2047 is mixed reviewed as a VR cyberpunk game. So we'll get rid of that. And then A Year of Springs. Looks like it's a visual novel. And what in the world do I describe this art with, as I'm continuing to try and figure out good phrasings of this? You would have to call this 2D flat colorful, but really I guess you would probably call it 2D flat natural, because we're not seeing any wild pink or red hair as far as the color palette goes. And see that's kind of the wrong way to do this. You might describe this as comic strip, like whatever that really would mean. I don't know if that's particularly 2D low detail. Definitely might be a great way of describing it. Low detail. I guess though I'm gonna say no to this in general. And let me just see if I can bring up the store here. Okay. So we're zoomed in a little bit, but let's see, the autumn sale has started. You can see they're promoting Spider-Man Remastered Red or Not Dead by Daylight. They want people to nominate for the Steam Awards. I wonder if they're even going to give you a reward. Like, I kind of feel like Valve wanted to get rid of the idea of giving Steam cards or store points in even though they introduced store points a while ago. Fallen Order. Let's see. Jedi Fallen Order here for $5.99, but I bet there's some DLC that bumps that up. That looks like a pretty good deal at 85% off. Generally, you should just be looking for 85% off. Half off on the Skywalker Saga is probably not that good of a deal because you're going to need to get all the DLC more than likely if you want to have a good experience, at least visually. digital gift cards being promoted, Steam Deck being promoted. They have a lot of different art here. Once again, they've gone far from their blue background. One of the problems I can see now that Steam would have if they got completely away from their blue background normally is that if they had a black background, it would look too much like the Epic Store, and that might cause some confusion. And if they have a white background, it really wouldn't look good for video games. But yeah, this almost feels like this is less autumn themed and more Chinese New Year themed. Fallout franchises being on sale. Players like you love apparently these games. A Hex, maybe not terrible. Ukulele for $4.49, not a terrible deal. We've got a game here called Light Master that is Light Matter that is totally free. So let's open that in a new tab. I'll deal with that. Pumpkin Jack is a remake of an old game for $11.99. May still be too expensive. Let's see. See all the games on my wish list. Yes. They're really only highlighting 4 games on your wish list and DLC for games I own, which apparently there's not much of a list there as far as DLC that I don't own. And some of that I definitely wouldn't want to buy, like Train Simulator. I guess I own Hotline Miami and Surviving Mars and Cities, Skylines, Airports. Yeah, none of that really interests me. The Steam Deck, we'll open that just to see if there would be any discount there. Cyberpunk 2077 is still too expensive. God of War 1, really too expensive at this point. Spider-Man, same way. Valve Index doesn't seem to be on any discount either. Tiny Tina Wonderlands is a little too expensive. And then apparently either my ad blocker is blocking all of the under 10s, or I don't know why my ad blockers at any point would be blocking that. Let's see, up to 75% off in total, like just nothing there. So that might be a bug, or it might be because I'm zoomed in too much. Then it's trying to push us into more categories, and then it's boiled down to just a solid red background. I don't think that works particularly well. Then once you get finally to the very bottom where it just constantly is going to try and promote more and more games to you. Here's Resident Evil 3 is on my wish list, but even at $9.99, should I get it now? Well, I should get Resident Evil 2 first, by far. Stray is 20% off, not much. Discount. Horizon Zero Dawn Complete Edition for $20 is probably pretty good. Half-Life Alyx. The Darkest Dungeon 2 is coming out, but I didn't like Darkest Dungeon 1, so I wouldn't play that. And yeah, this will just go on forever, so I'm kind of wasting these things. Noticeably here, I'm not seeing any adult games on the front page. Let's see, now we're just at black. I think Steam very possibly would just go with the black background and could bully the Epic Store into actually changing its background to stand out. And I don't think that many people would be that confused about whether they're on the Epic storefront or the Steam storefront. Yeah, I'm not seeing any adult content here, even though I know I have the preferences enabled to show adult content. Like, you would think there would have been something here by now. And so maybe they are getting to a level that on the main page, front page, even if you have that toggled, that doing sales, at least they're not willing to do it. I guess I should probably buy Resident Evil 7. Yeah, that definitely stands out as one I should get. Didn't realize I hadn't bought that yet. I really have just not bought any games in a while. Which, that's certainly unfair. Like, alright, so here's potentially our first adult game in Princess Farmer. But we had to scroll very, very far down. Here's our potential first visual novel. This game, Immortality, is free on iOS, I think, at the moment. Or Apple TV, one or the other. I don't remember. But yeah, if you toggled the preference that you want to see adult content, it should be on the front page if you're actually going to treat things fairly, because there definitely are games here that are not discounted or not discounted much, and they're getting higher, better treatment. I'm fine with going to the main page and then being told here's another adult game way down here. I'm fine with them saying, hey, click this button if you want to see adult content for each like screenshot, and I would be fine with them saying you have to click this button to see adult content for the entire page, otherwise we're going to temporarily lock it out. Like a 1 hour cookie type thing, where do you want to see adult content? It honestly would work fairly well if that was always the case, that adult content was toggled on as another adult game. Some of these, like Being a Dick Season 1, are pretty old too, so they are kind of the tried and true adult games. Right. So like this game, Light Matter, is not free. First hour for free, and then $6.79. So kind of deceptive advertising, and the fact that they can get away with that is sucky. Come back to that tab in a second. The Steam Deck here, the right choice to make is the 529 version that has 256 gigabytes. Now, arguably, after this season holiday, apparently you can't even get this right now. You'd have to reserve it. I wouldn't be surprised if they come out with a version that is somewhere around $4.99 and has the better screen. But actually, the only one that has the anti-glare etched glass is the $650 ones. See, that's just really exclusive. That's really too expensive for what you're going for, particularly when you have sales going on right now for $200, $300 to get an Xbox Series X. And the hardware is just not that good. The internal memory should be definitely cheaper in the next generation. The CPU and RAM speed should go up a little bit too. And the software needs to be improved quite a bit on the Steam Deck still too. So yeah, this first generation versions of the hardware is not really that good. 2.4 to 3.5 gigahertz at 4 core 8 threads, Ryzen Zen 2. Knock that up to a Zen 3 in the next generation, and then a 8 RDNA 2 CUDA units at 1 to 1.6 gigahertz is pretty much you need to double that. And battery power, I don't think anybody cares about it. I've never heard anyone say anything about the battery power of the Steam Deck other than it's okay. So if you came out with a new version that had the battery half as long, I don't think anybody would care. 16 gigabytes of low profile DDR5 onboard RAM at 5500. Yeah, you could probably go a little bit higher than that. Although, honestly, I think I would prefer the speed to stay the same and get 32 gigabytes of RAM instead. As someone who has 64 gigabytes of RAM, it's very nice for multitasking. But 32 would do you better than faster. It's a delicate balance too. And then storage in general just needs to be bigger. Some of this stuff on the Steam Deck, I would also say, is just, they're apparently already up to SteamOS 3.80. Some of the stuff on the Steam Deck though is also kind of unnecessary, and so I'd like to see a Steam Deck that perhaps has switchable units where you take out the touchpads and only have the thumbstick in that spot. And so maybe you buy the thumb pads as extra, because I just don't think a lot of people who are used to joystick controller games and playing joystick controller games really need the thumb pad at all. You could probably put what is going on the thumb pads just on the touchscreen, because I'm fairly certain it still has a touchscreen. And definitely you'd want to move the USB-C connector at the top to the bottom, because I mean, it's nice to have a USB-C at the top and bottom, but then it's crazy to have to use both of them in the dock. Maybe you get away from having two speakers and just have one. Maybe you put a microphone in it, maybe you put a camera in it, maybe you just have an attachment that adds a microphone and camera extra. At a certain level, there is a question about just getting rid of the side controllers altogether and just having a screen that you could then wirelessly connect your controller that you almost certainly already own to. Plug in a mouse and keyboard, plug in a Xbox or PlayStation controller, and then they don't have to add those components, and then potentially they can lower the price. Honestly though, they just need to lower the price and lose some money. I suspect they're not losing very much on the Steam Deck right now in sales. So yeah, this was the warning I saw. 1,071 titles have been excluded based on your preferences. And we're looking at all products that I think are less than $10 that are on sale, is I think what we just clicked on. And if anything, this just highlights the problem. There's going to be so many games that I already own, so unless you could hide items that are already owned, that can lower you down to just wishlist games. But mostly, if it's a game I'm interested in, it's probably on the wishlist, and the wishlist is too big to just scroll through all of this to see what I may have missed. You should probably get Madness Returns. At this point, it's probably not going to go on discount anymore. before they announce Alice Asylum and really start announcing Alice Asylum. Yeah, so shopping that way is not useful. And then this is probably under $10 instead of under $5. Same idea. And shopping that way is not that useful. Half-Life Alyx is at $23.99, but what I wanted to see is if the Valve bundle, if there's a way we could highlight the Valve bundle. Let's see. What game would be in the Valve bundle? This would be in the Valve bundle, certainly. So we'll click on Counter-Strike Global Offensive. The Valve Complete Pack during these sales tends to be very, very cheap for a lot of games. But the problem with a lot of games is that a lot of them are probably not things that any one individual wants to play. If you're interested in Portal like me, then you'll probably like Portal. You probably aren't that interested in Team Fortress 2 or Dota. If you like Left 4 Dead like me, then you Left 4 Dead 2, of course. If you're a super fan of the Half-Life series, you'll be suited very well, but I haven't played any of these Half-Life games. As far as Half-Life 1 Source or Half-Life 1, I don't know which one of these would even be the one I would want to play. Then I don't even know what Ricochet is. A lot of Half-Life games that would have to burn through. And I guess I can't really show the price here because I've already purchased it, but yeah, I think there is a pretty big discount, and this one is a decent thing to purchase if you like any two of these series and would be willing to try a third of the series that are in it. And then yeah, I need to buy Resident Evil Gold Edition for $15.86. Right. So the real shopping here, though, and it's something that only I can do and people who have a well-maintained oh, this is not going to work, is it? Trying to scroll down and it won't let me do it. Let me see if I can fix that. I had this problem, I think, last time there was a sale too, and I don't know what caused it. Because last time I looked at this, I was in Chrome. Like, it's like trying to hover under. So yeah, I probably need to just do this on... I'm probably just gonna have to do this off screen then, I guess. Because the sort by here pops up, and then no matter what you do, as long as the mouse moves over the next game, which is Lucas 3, it stops doing what I want it to do. Pop-up doesn't quite work. And trying to like use the arrow keys doesn't seem like that works either. Yeah. So yeah, it's just programmed poorly. Yeah. Valve's website, Steam, is not terrible, but it's not great. Well, suffice it to say, I would sort by discount first and look at all the games that are discounted and consider which of those games I really need to buy. Halo Master Chief Collection, maybe. Based on just what is the best deal, what is the most amount of games I can possibly get. And then I would also try to put an emphasis here in buying games that I want to get. So like Darksiders Genesis, maybe make some argument there so I could just be done with the Darksiders series. Resident Evil 3, maybe make some sense if I just buy Resident Evil 2. Some of these games are only 50% discounted, and that's how they've always been, so you have to really consider whether you would want to do that. And some of these games are not discounted much, but I might want to play them anyways. I probably should not go towards lewd games like the Sinrin Kagura series because I just don't have time to cover them. And I probably shouldn't go for Japanese RPGs too much, even if they are popular Japanese RPG games. And so that would be the first pass. And right now all the games are just ordered by a kind of arbitrary rank where the top 1,000 of a wish list that has probably 2,000 or 3,000 games are things I really want, where some of the things at the very bottom are things I haven't really considered. And then the other thing I would do is I would then sort not by discount but by price, because it's very possible that the final price offers you a better deal even if the percentage of discount is less. There are games out there that sell for $1.99 that would be selling half off for 99 cents, and that would be a much better deal than buying a game for $7.99 and having a equatable amount of entertainment around the two games. And so that's what I'll have to do off screen. Meanwhile, I'll just scroll through my my Twitter feed and see if there's any other news. I thought this was going to be a longer stream, but I guess there just wasn't that much news, particularly when I could go just on a full rant for 40 minutes at the beginning. Yeah. I do have a thought, certainly, and I don't think I could actually act on it, of potentially trying to stream every day and talk about video game news every single day and every single weekday. I don't think that would really work for my schedule, and I don't think it would really help. What it would create is a lot of situations where there would be shorter streams that are like 2 hours instead of 3 hour streams, and then there really wouldn't be that much news or that many games to have come out. Yeah, I don't think we're gonna have any more news today because I did start fairly late. My sleep schedule is still very much in a weird position, and I was very much considering drinking like a 5-hour energy drink to stay up all day when I was really sleepy, but then I would have sounded pretty bad. OBS Studio 29 Beta 1 is now available if you want to be a beta tester for your streaming software, recording software. I wouldn't recommend it. In fact, I think I'm still at like 28.3 or maybe even at 27.3. Yeah, tomorrow is Thanksgiving, so I probably won't do anything for that, and then the next day is Black Friday, and then over the weekend, I will stream on Friday, yes, but, or at least I'm planning to. But it's probably going to be a fairly abridged yeah. Sorry, I'm reading. Major Nelson highlighting that some Samsung TVs will let you stream games directly to the TV, no console required if you have a controller. I don't think there's a lot of TVs that would, in Samsung's lineup, that will do that. But yeah, I'll stream on Friday. It'll be talking about Black Friday a lot, but then mostly I'll spend most of Black Friday shopping. I'm gonna try real hard to not get into Amazon Prime's nonsense of just showing long lists of stuff for sale, because I really don't need stuff. Amazon Prime is doing something different now. They have a kind of gambly spin to win. It's not really gambling because you're not putting any money in. You're just putting in your time of a minute or two to go and click the virtual prize wheel, and you can spin that and get discounts, actual money back, which I think is really where Amazon should go, and a overall prize of $500. Although, arguably, if they're giving $500 of store credit to one person, they really aren't doing much at all. And hopefully they're giving it out to lots of people. Like, $500 is probably a lot to give out to 10,000 people, but if you gave it out to at least 300 or 400 people, that'd probably be nice, particularly if it's just store credit. Yeah, Amazon Prime as a service is not getting better and more of a value. It's getting worse. I did just hear Amazon Prime is like continuing the production, publishing, funding of some Australian / UK soap opera type shows. So that's what they're investing in, is soap operas. Which maybe that works, maybe that doesn't. Yep. And it's starting to rain and thunder outside. I can hear it. Alright, well, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.